I'm sure a lot of you would have thought of this question of when to go for an MBA. Should you do an MBA as a fresher, or should you go for an MBA after you have had significant work ex? Now, there is no one correct answer to this question. It completely depends on what exactly is your outlook towards life and what exactly is your expectation from an MBA. But we'll try to address this in broad terms as to what exactly happens if you join as a fresher for an MBA and what exactly happens if you join as someone with work ex for an MBA. Now, in terms of freshers, a lot of the freshers will have less to no functional clarity. They might not exactly know what exactly the marketing department or the finance department or the HR department of an organization does. And they might not really know what they are interested in because they might not have had exposure to real world scenarios. And that's why freshers will have less or no functional clarity in terms of what happens inside an organization. In terms of people with work ex, they will have a lot of functional clarity because they would have been a part of an actual setup. They would have probably interacted with the various departments and they would know what exactly these departments do. They would also be able to figure out which departments are they interested in so that they will be able to make best use of their MBA program. So that is basically where people with work ex might have an edge because they would have more functional clarity. Having said that, these are blanket statements and I'm sure that there will be some freshers who will have amazing clarity in terms of what they want to do in their life. But for most of the people, these statements are true. Now, in terms of freshers, if we are looking at workplace etiquettes, so how to report to work, how exactly to work as a team, how exactly to be in a team and get work done without having people officially reporting to you. So all those things that are a part of an organizational setup will be alien to freshers because they might not have worked exactly in a scenario that will help them appreciate how exactly to work in a proper office environment. In terms of people with work ex, they would be much more organized, they would probably be much more tolerant and better exposed to how exactly things work in the office space. Then if you look at the learning flexibility, here freshers will have an edge, be it in terms of appearing for the test, appearing for interviews, or being a part of a 2-year MBA program. So in this particular scenario, freshers will have an edge because they will have a continuity in terms of their educational, again, background that is there. So they would have recently taken a test, they would be able to prepare for another test in that particular flow. They will also be able to get into a B school and appear for those tests as well in the same flow. So that is where a fresher might have an advantage because they will be much more flexible in terms of the learning experience. Similarly, if you look at what happens after an MBA as well, freshers are generally perceived to be much more flexible in terms of what work they would be doing. So let's say, for example, you get into a sales role. You might be expected to start from the ground up. So what will happen in your first stint is you might have to go to the market and sell actual stuff as a salesperson does. And a lot of freshers will do it very enthusiastically because for most of them it would be something that they are doing for the first time. But for someone with a couple of years of work ex who is used to working in a particular manner, getting out into the market and selling things might seem to be a downgrade. So again, it's a blanket statement. A lot of work ex people might also do it enthusiastically, but in most cases this will be true. So there will be a slight rigidity that will be there in terms of people with work ex, and in terms of freshers, they will be much more flexible. And that is why there are a lot of roles as well wherein freshers are preferred. So for some roles which include some finance roles for some organizations, sales and marketing roles, or even some roles in general management, freshers with a broader outlook will be preferred over people with work ex. Having said that, there will be exceptions to this rule in both scenarios. Not all freshers will be flexible, not all work ex people will be rigid, and there is a healthy intersection that exists. But again, broadly speaking, freshers will bring a lot of learning flexibility, enthusiasm that will be there. And in terms of work ex people, they will be slightly more rigid and slightly more limited in terms of how to crack tests and how exactly to study for those 2 years. In terms of the placement process is broadly divided into 2 areas. One is the general placement process wherein anybody can sit and stake their claim on a particular role that is being offered. And in the other placement process, there is a lateral placement process wherein companies are looking for lateral hires. So when I say lateral hires, there will be people who will be moving from bottom to the top, and then there will be people who will be joining laterally. So in terms of lateral hiring, there is a lateral placement process. Now the lateral placement process is generally open to people with more than say 18 or 24 or 30 months of work ex, depending on the B school that you are a part of, depending on your batch profile. So that is basically how the lateral placement process differs from the general placement process. So people who have, let's say, more than 2 years of work ex will also be a part of the lateral placement process, wherein you might be getting slightly larger roles. So that is how the placement process differs. Otherwise, there is no problem whatsoever. People who are freshers will get ample opportunities. People with work ex will also get ample opportunities. So except the name of the process, otherwise opportunities should not exactly be different. In terms of the work ex that is there, so freshers will have more post MBA work ex. So if someone has not worked for a couple of years before their MBA, they are going to work for a couple of years more after their MBA, assuming that both these people have a similar number of years of work ex that is available to them. In terms of work ex, for people with work ex, we are talking about pre-MBA work ex that will be there. Now the pre-MBA work ex, if it's relevant, will definitely work in their favor. But if the pre-MBA work ex is not exactly relevant, then it would not exactly contribute too much. And broadly speaking, if you look at 1 year of pre-MBA work ex versus 1 year of post-MBA work ex, 1 year of post-MBA work ex will be much more valuable, will be much more rewarding, be it in terms of money, be it in terms of the responsibilities that you're handling, compared to 1 year of pre-MBA work ex. And that's why it's always advised to have more work ex post your MBA than pre-MBA. On the other hand, if you have relevant work ex before your MBA, it will help you get better roles on campus because it will show a lot of clarity, consistency, and it will give you continuation in terms of your progression. And that is where people with work ex might have an edge if they have relevant work ex. If you look at the interviews that are there for people with or who are freshers with no work experience, then those interviews will be mostly focused on their final year ACADS or their graduation ACADS. Whereas for people with work ex, they will be focused more on their area of work. So then they will have more things to talk about. They will have things from their work to talk about, and they might also be quizzed a bit on their graduation. So that way people with work ex might have more things to talk about compared to a fresher. Now, if you look at the conclusion of this entire discussion, there is no one answer of whether you should be a fresher or whether you should have work ex. Each one of them has their own pros, has their own cons. There are benefits, there are disadvantages in both scenarios. So it's basically a call that you have to take. Having said that, roughly 40 to 50% of batches at IIMs and top B schools will consist of freshers, which means that roughly 50 to 60% will have work ex in some form or the other, ranging from 6 months, 1 year, 2 years to even more than 5 years in many cases. So then there is a healthy mix in terms of the batch profile that exists. But because it's possible for you to get into an IIM or a top B school as a fresher, because there is no condition that prohibits you from applying to these institutes, we would strongly suggest that you take the CAT in your final year if you have dreamt of going for an MBA at any point in time. If you manage to get into a B school, if you manage to convince them that you are worthy enough of going for an MBA program, being a fresher as well, it's fine. You can go ahead and go for the program. Because as I already mentioned, 1 year of post-MBA work ex will be much more rewarding compared to 1 year of pre-MBA work ex. And if you end up getting a convert, why not go ahead and take it? So that is the whole discussion on whether you should go for an MBA as a fresher or as someone with work ex. You can take your call, you can basically decide what you want to do and what are the pros and cons for this entire process. Wish you all the best with your preparation and hope you join the B school of your choice. All the best.